Taking on the whole universe. Hello and welcome to the Nono Show podcast. This is your host, Craftsdwarf, here with my co-host, Mathwiz. Say hello, Mathwiz.
This podcast is sure to be, say it with me, kids, Kirayaba!
Yeah!
Give me your best Kirayaba, Craftsdwarf.
Kirayaba!
Yeah.
Which is funny. I've been interested in this discussion. So one, this is like the closest we've done Nono shows together, I think, in a while at least, because Ojamaja took a while. Sharp.
And if you thought Ojamaja, the gap between Ojamaja Doremi episodes was bad, think about the last time we did a Precure series.
Yeah, this
almost
one
2 years ago.
No, this one's been over for half a year, which I know because Healing Good Precure, which I've been watching weekly since it started, is at like episode 29 out of presumably there was a hiatus because of coronavirus. So if not for that, it might even be like 30 in the mid 30s. So out of so it's presumably going to be like 45 episodes long when it finishes. So we're only 15 weeks away from a new Precure series. And this was the last one that's completed. Star Twinkle was actually the first one I started weekly, but I did put it down about halfway through because I was starting the Weeb Club. I didn't want to watch too many seasonals. Now I'm watching 9 weekly shows, including Precures, so,
Rip.
But,
yeah, I guess that'll be, like, an interesting thing about this one, is that we both kind of come from the same perspective of started watching it weekly when it first came out, and then at some point dropped off of watching it, and only catching up on it more recently.
Right, and we didn't go back. I didn't go back, and neither of us went back and rewatched, though we did start. You started from like episode 15-ish, and I started from episode 25-ish. So Mathwoods has seen like 10 more episodes more recently than me, and of course we also both watched the movie. Well, I watched both movies because the first one, it was one of the cross. It was they've been doing these 3-way crossover ones where they'll cross over the current series with the 2 previous series. So, and I'd seen a la Mode and Hugto Precure, so I'm like, well, there's no reason not to watch it. Where I've avoided some of the other ones because they usually involve Mahosekai characters, which I haven't seen that show. So I guess I've technically seen everything Star Twinkle related.
Did you also watch the one that would have been between the Healing Good, the one that came after?
I don't think there's been a movie since.
There hasn't?
And possibly because of coronavirus and stuff.
That's unfortunate.
So I don't know. Because I don't think they've... Yeah, because I would think it would be Hugto, Star Twinkle, and Healing Good, but if it's... I haven't seen anything about it, so... Because usually they do, like, especially for the movie that would be airing around this time, they do it includes shots of it in the opening and ending, which they did for Star Twinkle and they did for Hugto. But anyway, I guess let's actually talk about Star Twinkle for a little bit. So this is the biggest score discrepancy we've had on the Nono show. Like normally we've been within a point of each other. How do you feel about Star Twinkle Precure?
I guess like, in a general sense, like this was a series that, it wasn't so much that like, oh, I almost dropped it twice, as in like, it was so bad that I just couldn't sit through it, but as like more of a passive, I'm not totally vibing with this one as much, it didn't hook me like Hugto did. So it was more just like, I got busy with other things and just kind of... I even tried to pick it back up like at one point back in January or whatever, and I watched a couple episodes and then just didn't keep up with it again because like it just didn't grab me. But I am glad that that we were able to go back to it and finish it. I especially think watching it more recently, it was good to be more disconnected from Hugto because I know for like the first core. A lot of I definitely had like a Hugto bias because that was my first, and so I'm like, yeah, these characters might be kind of neat, but they're not as good as they're not as good as the Hugto cast. Hikaru is no Nono Hana. She might be dumb and good, but she's not as dumb or as good as Nono Hana, and that sort of thing. But with that kind of caveat out of the way, like more like coming back to it more recently, I was able to kind of I had more distance from Hugto, so I was more like, okay, I can appreciate what the show is doing on its own. But overall, yeah, I kind of felt like it took, like, the ending stretch was very good. It brought everything home really well and wrapped everything up in a satisfying way. But I feel like the first, like, 30 or so episodes, I feel like there could have been more of that, like, more foreshadowing to the conclusion, like, more to... It just felt like it was a lot... It was more, like, backloaded. Like, I wasn't as enthralled with the early stuff.
Like, part of the reason I think our scores are so discrepant is because, like, I would say, as far as the Precure shows that I've finished, which is Futari wa Precure, Cure Precure a la mode, Heartcatch Precure, Hugto Precure, and now Star Twinkle Precure. Star Twinkle Precure, I would honestly say, is the least consistent, because, like, yeah, I kind of agree. For, like, 30 episodes or so, there's some good stuff in there, but there's not a lot. And then once you hit the last, like, 13, 15 episodes, it's kind of, like, all great, or at least I thought I thought it was really good.
I will definitely say, you know, I had mentioned it to you, like, some of the character, you know, the episodes that kind of, like, wrapped up the character conflicts. I was like, wow, I got a little teary-eyed over this character that I did not care about for the majority of the series. So
I cried a bunch.
Like I said, it wrapped it up really well.
Yeah, and, like, for comparison, I think Heartcatch Precure is really consistent. I think Hugto Precure is pretty consistent. A la mode was almost a reverse, where it's like the first 11 episodes or so, I wasn't super into it, but then after that, they introduced a better antagonist, and they started going more into the characters, and so, you know, where Star Twinkle, like, the last part of it was really good. For a la mode, it was only the first part that wasn't super good. And then Futari wa Precure was also really consistent. It was just, like, consistently mid. I hope you did already start it, so I do hope you like it, but we'll talk about that maybe next. We'll see how it goes. Probably next, yeah. I don't see you starting another Magical Girl series before you finish Futari wa. So I guess there, if you're wondering what we're going to do next, yeah, it's Futari wa Precure, the first one, so...
Although lately I've been on a real Magical Girl kick, so maybe I'll juggle like 5 at once and then burn out and then never finish them.
Finish any of them, and the Nono show is over. But yeah, I guess, like, I will say, like, as far as Star Twinkle, I did really like it, but it wouldn't be the first Precure season I recommend, because, like, I gave it an 8, so it's my 4th favorite Precure season out of 5 that I've finished. And again, it's not consistent, even though, like, I do think the good stuff is really good. Where, yeah, I'd sooner recommend probably Heartcatch Precure or Hugto Precure first, even though Precure a la mode is my personal favorite, but it does have that weak start in comparison. Though maybe rewatching it, I'll appreciate the start more. You know, so yeah, and you know, with you, Matthews, yeah, you watched Hugto Precure and you really gelled with a lot of it, and then Star Twinkle wasn't as good, so it took you longer and it was harder for to watch in general. So, like,
yeah, and I feel like, you know, I think it is, like, maybe the first 12 to 15 episodes were better than I gave them credit for because of my Hugto bias. Like, that's a possibility. I did go back and rewatch the first episode just to kind of familiarize myself with it again, because there were certain things, like, there were certain callbacks in the ending episode that I did not remember were ever introduced because it had been almost 2 years since I had seen the first episode. But where was I going with that? What led me to that? What were you saying before that?
Consistency and the like, this wouldn't be the first series I recommend, even though I did like it.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Because I was mentioning Futari wa and how, like, you know, going into that one, I have more of, like, you know, I understand more of, like, the context around it. Like, oh, it's not like this is this, you know, with Star Twinkle, it was, you know, starting it so soon after finishing Hugto, it was kind of hard to separate it, you know, it being the same franchise and being so fresh.
Yeah, it's also really different.
Yeah, like, Futari wa going into it, I not only, like, know that it's, like, the first series and, you know, it's going to be different than what I'm used to seeing out of these two series, but also, you know, I'm not going in, you know, even if I would, you know, I try not to compare things to each other and I try to give everything its fair shake, but with Star Twinkle, it was a little difficult, and I feel like by this point I've had a little more time to, I don't know, maybe my media consumption habits have changed a little bit.
I mean, you've watched, like, again, you watched Star Twinkle, like, 30 episodes at a pretty decent pace. You were doing daily watching for a good portion of that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, compared to, again, like, Ojimata Doremi, where it took quite a while for you to finish it. So, that's an interesting set. And you didn't even like Star Twinkle that much in comparison. Like, what was Mathwis?
I will say, like, watching an episode of Magical Girl anime a day really is the way to go. Like, I started that a bit with Doremi, although Doremi, I think I did a little more marathoning it.
Doremi was
Star
more
Twinkle,
like, I would rather not read Kinnikuman. What else can I do?
True,
oh, hey,
yeah.
Doremi's right there. Right, anyway.
But yeah, like, the Magical Girl anime, like, generally I was watching, like, an episode with breakfast or something, or, something where it's, like, I don't have much, like, energy to do, like, super deep thinking, but I can still do something where it's, like, okay, my brain is not totally disengaged. And so, like, that's not to say, like, oh, I turned my brain off, and that's why I dislike Star Twinkle, because, like, it does have good ideas in there, and I did like what some of the characters had going. But yeah, I feel like maybe it might even just be that, now that I've consumed a second Precure series, it's like, okay, I have two different things to kind of go off of and get a general, like, basis of what Precure can and can't be, or, like, what it might entail, whereas, like, when there's only one to go off of, it's, like, very easy to make a comparison, I guess.
Right. Well, and I guess in my case, I maybe I lucked out because the first series I started with was actually Mahoutsukai, which I watched 2 episodes of and dropped because it was I didn't like it. It was boring. And then I watched Alamode, and it was like that, but slightly better for like 11 episodes, and then it started getting really good and started doing really interesting shit I haven't seen anywhere else. And it has a cast I really fucking love. So at the end, like, I'm thinking, like, maybe it'll be a 10 out of 10 when I rewatch it. I don't know. And Star Twinkle wasn't that, but, I still really liked it. And so I guess to actually start talking about it more generally without spoilers, yeah, I kind of said it earlier, but it made me cry a lot. Like, I remember I was in, like, the first like, 10 episodes or so, and I think it was one of the first times they did the... Star Twinkle might have, like, my favorite transformation sequences.
They are really good.
And the lyrics... what's
going to be really bizarre is going to other Precure series and having the transformation not be a song, because, like,
right?
It just seems so, like, natural, like, oh, it's a kid's show and yeah, they're doing all these magical things, so, like, yeah, of course it would be a song. And after going through, like, 50 episodes of it, it's like, wait, what do you mean? What do you mean that the transformation isn't a song? That wasn't always a thing?
Right, like, and I think, like, the first time they did the group transformation, they're all singing together. Like, I actually started tearing up, and I'm like, I'd give this show, like, a 6. Why are there tears in my eyes? Because they're doing the typical transformation stock footage that I'm going to be seeing a billion times.
They do a lot with that transformation song. Like, even in later episodes when they'll do, like, different renditions of it, or especially at the very end when they do the like, slower version, and it's like, oh my god, yeah, making this a song, it paid off.
Like, that was the whole reason they did it, was for the ending, and it was so good. And yeah, they would change it up. Like, for the character-focused episodes towards the end, they'd still do the group transformation, but they would show more clips of Elena or Madoka because they're the focus of the episode. Yeah. So they change it up a little bit, and I really appreciated that. And yeah, the lyrics and were just like they even do a little, like, they're, especially Lala, she does like a little dance at one point, and it's the cutest fucking thing ever. And I love the transformations. They're so good. Madoka's in particular has really fucking amazing animation. Like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, especially the part where she, like, blows the glitter at the very end and does, like, her spin. And
and their hair, and good. Holy shit. Someone went off on that one. It's so good. I like the transformations. Like, it's just maybe it's a weird, like, I guess I'm focusing on it because it's something I wouldn't normally mention or bring up, like, in, like, I like in Ojimata Doremi Sharp, like, how they add the music in the, like, I was like, oh, that's really standout compared to the first one. But then, like, Star Twinkle is kind of on another level. So, and for enjoyment for me, and I just, like, oh god, it's good. It's really good. Well, in general, I think the presentation is possibly some of the best I've seen in a Precure series. Like, just the music, the visuals tended to look good, and of course could get great in certain moments. And the movie was fucking great visually. Like, it was just a really solid production overall.
I think, if I really had to nitpick it, like, I definitely think in some of the earlier episodes where, like, the thing about making it a song is that, like, until the group gets together, there's a degree to which it is, like, incomplete. and like that's kind of the point. I think like I don't know if it was like some of like the vocal mixing but like there for certain characters I didn't particularly care for their like solo.
It's also possible like maybe they're not the best singers.
Well, that too I thought was kind of interesting because like with certain anime VAs, they will already have like some sort of experience with either they like already have some sort of experience with doing singing, or I think for something like I don't have any like evidence to back this up, so don't quote me on it, but I'm thinking like in K-On! Where like the cast gets better at it as they have more time to like play the characters and do stuff with music. But also like with Precure, I think not and again, not always, because there are times where notable voice actors who already are pre-established will voice a cure, but definitely with some of the Precure characters, like the voice actors will be newer. You know, they're like newer to the industry, younger.
Yeah, I haven't checked, but I would not be surprised at all, especially if Hikaru and Lala's voice actresses were newer. That would be the least surprising thing. Especially, well, like, they just have, especially Hikaru, I think, they have more distinct than average voices, and I feel like that maybe happens more with newer voice actresses, or maybe that's a weird bias I have, but I just, it seems right to me. But yeah, also some of her singing, especially at the start, wasn't the best, but maybe she did get better. I'd have to compare.
Well, what I thought was kind of interesting, because this also ties into like the EDs and how normally it'll be all the characters singing together, but for the EDs it was only Hikaru's voice actress.
Also, I'm checking real quick that the ED singer is not Hikaru's voice actress. Hikaru is voiced by Naruse Amy, and this says the EDs were sung by Chihaya Yoshitake. So.
So it wasn't even any of the characters doing the EDs. That's interesting.
Huh. So speaking of EDs, like in general, I tend to like the Precure EDs, and Star Twinkles are no exception. Both of them are really good and fun.
Yeah, this is another thing I had mentioned to you at some point, but like Hugto's second ED definitely had like a very distinct aesthetic to it. And it definitely, for like the first Star Twinkle ED, it seemed like they had like carried that style over and then just like made it better. Like I don't know how else to describe it. Like it was a very similar. I don't know. Like I'm not good at describing like how do they make it better, but it's good. Like it's the same good visuals, and it's got the very very catchy upbeat song, and it's
really good CG. Like it wasn't like a heart catch. Not the EDs weren't that good. Like they weren't bad, but it's like 2011 CG, and I didn't care for the second song at all. But it's really cool seeing how they evolved, and basically since a la mode, at least counting for the series that I've seen, I really like all the EDs except for the second Healing Good one, which is such a step down from the first one. It makes me sad, even though it's like fine, but it's just like, well, I'd put it under both of Alamodes, both of Hugto's, both of Star Twinkles, and the other Healing Good one. So
Also, going through just the vocal talent again, Hikaru's was definitely like the least experienced, whereas the other ones had all seemed to have like done various roles in the industry before.
Interesting. Yeah, because that's kind of what I would guess. But I did. Yeah, I think she did good at Hikaru. But I guess there were definitely times where I feel like
I'm not even saying that that's like a bad thing. Like, you're inexperienced, and so therefore. But I do think it is interesting how, Toei Animation kind of has this reputation of like, like there a lot of people get their start there. And so like a show like Precure, I don't know. Okay, never mind. I'm not gonna go too far off into that. But like, I'd imagine the same with like some of these. Basically, like anyone who works on a Precure, either, like if you're someone newer, it's like a good chance to really get like develop, I guess, as a creative in whatever field you may be in.
Yeah, well, because like I definitely. Like, a good example is the transformation sequences, because they will tend to vary. Like, usually the pink ones are sort of made as, like, the template for the other ones, so they tend to be the more, like, simple of the transformations in comparison. What, like, if you can compare Hikaru's to Madoka's, for example, like, one of these is like a pretty normal transformation sequence, and the other is fucking gorgeously animated, and they tend to be storyboarded or in it, like, and animated differently. Like, they sort of like maybe it is sort of a way to like train certain staff members, or and yeah, in the case of juniors, like, they would have the people be pushed to learn things and get better.
Yeah, because like Toei is also
right.
one of like the oldest anime studios, so there's a good mix.
Right, they're
of, like,
old and big. They have at least 3 projects going at any given time. Like right now it's One Piece, Healing Good Precure, and Dai's Great Adventure, Dragon Quest. They've done like Dragon Ball Super a few years ago. Like, yeah, they're gonna have different teams and different talents, and just working to keep that, again, like you said, they're an old studio, so keep that legacy. They've got a lot of big projects that have been going for a while, and I imagine they want to keep it that way. So yeah, it makes sense.
Sorry, I don't know how I took us off on that tangent, but
I feel like we haven't talked that much about Star Twinkle yet. Somehow. No, it's fine. But I still think it's an interesting discussion. I guess we could just talk about like just our general favorite characters, or which ones we tended to like. Because I think Lala was my favorite. She was really cute, and her character stuff tended to be really good. I also ended up liking Elena a lot by the end. I didn't expect that, but the stuff she got at the end I thought was really good. Hikaru, of course. Sorry.
Well, no, sorry. I'll let you finish your thoughts, I guess, before I jump in. Because I'm like, oh, I need to give my thoughts on this character, and I need to give my thoughts on this character.
I guess just
it makes more sense to do.
Madoka and the mid-season Kira were probably my least favorite of the cast. And anyway, that about sums up my general thoughts.
Oh, you weren't a big fan of Uni?
That could be a spoiler, Mathis.
Oh, well, I mean, she shows up in the first core. Never mind. Never mind.
Also, Fuwa was really, really cute, and then she transformed, and it was a complete downgrade, and it's like, no.
Yeah, I'd probably agree. I definitely like just the puffball. I never got to make this joke in a tweet, but back like when it was first airing, it was more like in the heat of like the Smash Bros reveals, which I guess still kind of happened. So I was like, put Fuwa in Smash. But I never made that tweet, and so now it lives on here. On the podcast.
She's got like different costumes like made for her, like, because I did like whenever they find one of the pens, she'd get like a little Cancer outfit or a little Leo outfit, and they were also tended to be cute. And it's like, yeah, but then she turns into a unicorn thing, and it's like, no, go back. Anyway, so yeah, what did you think about the characters overall?
I'm thinking about it, and like I'm not sure if I have a clear-cut favorite. I dug myself into a hole earlier when I'm like, oh, I've made all these comparisons to Hugto, but I've definitely shaken that off. And now I'm gonna come back and be like, well, none of the characters really, like, even if I did think that they got better, well, not even that they got better, but that like I had a better chance to appreciate them. Well, like 4 of the 5 characters in Hugto I really, really enjoyed. And I don't feel like I have any one particular character here who even measures up to like my 4th least favorite in Hugto. However, I did really like Hikaru after. Well, there's one episode she gets, which we'll talk about more in spoilers. But after she had like that one episode, I was like, oh, okay, I see what's going on here. I like this. I did really like Elena. I liked the her whole character conflict. It was neat. Definitely like the dealing with like family and stuff. It was cool. My least favorite, I mean, like Lala was also good, but she's, I guess, kind of like the middle of the pack for me. But then really the 2 who didn't quite grab me as much was the mid-season Cure, yeah. And I just didn't really gravitate towards Madoka that much. Like, I think that's just like a character archetype that I tend to not dislike, but just like nothing about it really like gets me like, oh yeah, I love this character. Because thinking of like my least favorite Hugto character, it would be Saya, who was also very much like the more refined, more smart, intelligent sort of character. And Madoka, being from like the more, what's the word I'm looking for? I can't think of it off the top of my head. But yeah, she is definitely more like
higher class background, and and I do like how I assume the episode that made you cry, where it gets into some of her conflict, and contrasts
like
with
I
her
said,
with one of the
that
antagonists.
episode did really well with, digging more into that character conflict, and it was just a really well put together episode as well. So like even by the end, I didn't dislike her, but I think she just kind of never fully clicked with me. But I think it's less like her. I don't know. It's just like a general archetype. Not that like I dislike her because she's that archetype, but it's just like not much I can do about it. That's just like my personal preferences, I guess.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Saya, because the character I had been thinking, because, especially early on, part of a character, she had to be perfect to live up to the expectations of her father. And so I wasn't thinking about Saya, I was thinking about the purple Precure from Precure a la mode, of which perfection is also a part of character. She also comes from a high-class background. But she's also, like, literally my favorite character in Precure. Like, Hana's really close. So I'm kind of curious as to what you'd think of her, or in just Alamode in general, like, because I want to rewatch
maybe
it. So
in 2035 when I've
exactly.
caught up on all the Precure seasons, and I can finally start a la mode.
Gotta watch them in chronological order. But yeah, so yeah, as good as the stuff Monica has was, like, at the end of the day, like, on some, like, what she was different, and that was good, like, even though there's some ideas being explored. But yeah, I especially at the start, I was comparing her to literally my favorite character in Precure.
Yeah, and it's not even like, she's similar to a character. That's why I didn't. Like, I definitely...
No, I don't think either of us feel that way.
If anything, the character who suffered most from, like, me comparing to Hugto was Hikaru, because she is the same sort of lead protagonist type of being, like, the dumbass, but she tries really hard and she means well. But again, like, she ended up being one of the more interesting over the course of the season. So none of the... I don't know. I think I don't mean to keep bringing up Hugto, because that's the whole point of what I'm trying to get against. Because my character arc was that I got over that, but then in, like, the podcast, all I've been doing is bringing it up when I'm bad at.
Well, I think
I'm
part
bad
of the
at
problem is that, like, you only have one other series. You have literally one whole series and one episode of Futari as a frame of reference for Precure, or I have 4 other series and like 2 episodes of one that I watched years ago. So. Not that I'm not comparing either, but it's just like, I have a little more options to compare to, I guess. So maybe I don't know, where you have one, so it's like it's harder to separate in your mind, I guess. So where for me it's like, oh yeah, this is another Precure seasons, where it's due, like, yeah, this is another Precure season, like Hugto Precure, the only one I've watched. So, or the only other one, yeah. So anyway,
I will also say that the one character who gets introduced for the movie, I'd be remiss to not mention her, even though obviously I'll talk about her more later. The aesthetic character, perhaps. But the fact that she got introduced and wasn't a recurring character felt like a missed opportunity to me. Like, she had a really good dynamic with one of the Cures.
Yes.
And she seemed like a good foil character, and it's like, wait a minute. Why are you only introducing her, like, 3 cores into the series? Where was she in the beginning?
And you even said, like, and I agree, she was better in the episode, movie tie-in episode, than she was in the movie that she was made for.
Which was why she existed in the first place.
Right, so it's like, come on, give it more dog. But I was gonna talk about, I guess as far as side characters go, I liked how the antagonists ended up, like, because I didn't really pick up on it until, like, the very end of the show, when they start really contrasting them with the Precures, and I'm like, oh, where they all have their sort of counterpart among the Precures, and I was like, oh, that's good. So
yeah, I will also say that maybe, like, I'd appreciate the earlier stretch more with the context of the later stretch, because I didn't feel as though, like, I was very interested in, like, the character parallels that when they came up later, but I was like, was there a much foreshadowing to that? Like, I was thinking back to the other conflicts, and I didn't really remember any particular things that led into, like, these characters play off of each other, like, they're supposed to be, like, foils, like, but I didn't really get that vibe.
I'd say with Iwan and the mid-season Cure, that one was,
that one
considerably
was pretty obvious from
they were connected from the beginning. But, like, where Tenjo and Elena, did, like, Tenjo have a huge, like, was there stuff that you could have noticed in those earlier episodes? I don't remember, but it's definitely there by the end, and it was good. but yeah, was it there from the beginning? So I don't remember, but
And not that it like had to be, because like, stories can figure things out over time, kind of come into whatever it is that they're doing. That's what Shonen Jump narratives do a lot.
And at the end of the day, it's good, and that's kind of what's important.
Yeah, it gets to the good place, and so it's like, yeah, it's there. There's something here.
Anyway, I guess it's time to move on to spoilery thoughts, so we can get more into the characters and story and such. So if you're interested in it, consider checking it out. Again, if you're looking for a consistent Precure season, maybe not Star Twinkle, but I don't know. I think it has good stuff. So yeah.
One thing it definitely has, like, over Hugto, like Hugto might potentially be a barrier as far as like, it's the anniversary season, so there's all these callbacks. I was about to say,
there's no crossovers. Like, it's completely standalone.
Yeah, Star Twinkle is completely standalone, so you don't have to worry about like, oh, here's an episode to promote the movie, and so all the cures are here. It's very self-contained in that regard.
Was that a good episode of Hugto Precure? Yeah. Would they have been better if, like, I had all the context of those series it refers back to? Probably, but that's like 600 episodes or 700 episodes or so, like, to catch up to do. So yeah, and that's more akin to like most Precure seasons. Actually, all of them, except Hugto. So what you just said, like, oh, here's this one thing that Star Twinkle has over Hugto. Well, here's this one thing that every other season of Precure has over Hugto. So
that's fair.
Sad.
Now we're gonna play the Math Wiz Stop Mentioning Hugto challenge.
Take a shot every time. No, it's too late for that. They'd already be dead. Anyway, spoilers. Where do we start, actually? I mean, I guess we could talk about Hikaru, because you mentioned the one episode that you liked, that you really framed your character for you.
The episode where it focused more on like her father and like her as a child, and like kind of it gave you a really good idea of like how she came to be who she is, like the whole focus on like the like the aliens and all these oddities in life. And I thought it was really interesting. Was it this particular episode that did it? There was a point where, whoops, I already have to break my challenge, but it was like important for me for like recontextualizing her character as like the protagonist, and I was like, oh, she's just not as good as Hana. But then like as the series went along, and I think it was this episode, or I don't know if it clicked for me in a later episode, but it's more like Hana is someone who is very motivated by other people. Like a lot of what like the conflict of her character is that she's always trying to like support other people, and she's less of like, I don't know, Hikaru is more like self-fulfilling, and like by pursuing the things that she is interested in, that like elevates the people around her to like do better themselves. It's less of, whereas like Hana was more of like a cheerleader and more, I don't know, like I felt like there was more self-motivation with Hikaru, because she talked about how she tended to like go off on her own and just kind of focus on her own thing and paid less attention to other people. And I just thought that was neat, and it helped me like finally like disconnect from her predecessor and finally like judge her on her own merits. And I just really liked that, especially like the episode with her father, and really getting the idea of like, oh, this is how she came to be who she is, because she has this father who does this stuff that is a little more out there, a little off the beaten path, and of course like she got the whole like catchphrase from him, and then also like the episode focusing on her mother and the fact that she's like a mangaka, and so she's also kind of doing this very like creatively ambitious profession, I guess you could say. Like she's very focused on like the things that interest her, and I thought it just like the whole family tied together really well in that regard.
I'm not sure if I have much to say about Hikaru at the moment, so I'll just move on to, well, because like I think the weakest parts of the show in general were when they were going on their like space adventures, because the places they went to tended not to be super interesting, and it also didn't tend to do as much for their characters. Like I think part of the reason I'm not into Uni as much is because like her whole arc was, I don't know, I just maybe just wasn't super into her in the first place, but also like I don't know, like her whole arc, I just wasn't super into either. So like maybe that was part of why I put the show down, was because I
What
kind
are you talking about? I mean, we had the whole 2019 furry anime boom. Nobody mentioned Uni. Nobody mentioned the Precure character. Everybody's talking about B-Stars, B&A. Star Twinkle was ahead of the curve.
You're right. Mathis is on point. Everyone forgot about Blue Cat. But yeah, so like those, but the favorite of those, I think, space adventures was when they got to Lala's home planet, and it helped frame her and what her deal was like, because she was kind of an outcast on her home planet because she like didn't use technology that much, but she like compared to Hikaru, she was still pretty reliant on it, which you can really see in the beginning of the show, where she's like, I have a 0.0000001 chance to become Precure. I can't do it. And then she looks up Hikaru, and it's like Hikaru had the exact same percent chance, because it's not about like percentages and numbers. It's about, taking that action, and regardless of, and so. And, there was the little fight they had in an early episode where, Lala was using her technology and Hikaru was being Hikaru, and they had a little fight over it. And then, but so even though Lala is still like more reliant on technology, compared to like her home planet, she's like a weirdo because she doesn't rely on it enough. How she's used to walking everywhere, and everyone else will take these little scooters or hoverboards.
Yeah, because then
whatever.
you see it later when they all are trying to walk, and she's like, you can take you're so slow, like you can't even keep up with me, and they're like exhausted. But it's like, no, it's the cool thing nowadays.
Right, and of course that happened because of the conflict during that episode where they lost all their technology that they relied on, and then they're like, help, what do I do? I can't run away because my legs are bad, and Lala's just like...
Can we also talk about how the AI got like a death scene and a revival scene, and like the AI had a character arc? That was pretty cool.
Yes, where the AI understood Lala, and she, like at the end of the first episode where Lala becomes a criminal because you must have been trying to steal the pen and take your brother's deed, and she's like, what? And I'm like, you motherfuckers, don't bully Lala, she is precious. Even when like the show bullies her, like when I watched the movie, in like 10 minutes there were like 3 or 4 moments of Lala getting bullied, and I need to like screen cap all of these, because and she's cute when she's bullied. Like there's one where she gets teleported and she's just like falling, and she's got a really funny expression.
I did also think that like when that was one of those like head scratching moments, like when maybe it was just the way that they had framed it, because they showed like a little bit of video on like the file before it like broke, that it was like Tenjo was there, and she's like, let's take the pen, and then the guy's like, it must be Lala trying to steal the pen, and I'm like, wait, hello, did you not, was that just for the audience to see? I'm confused.
Yeah, but well, like part of why it was good for framing Lala's character is because like kind of this recurring idea, like obviously there's imagination, which is also just general like visualization and
imagination.
Yes, hey, that's a different show. Maybe the way they just say it the same way. Sorry, the way you said it reminded me of Tokuger, the clip I used in my Toku video.
Oh.
And so I was just like, so I just had that moment of like, but no, I guess that's how they say it in the show too. So never mind. But anyway, where like, because like, because Lala was different, she didn't feel at home on her own home. So that's kind of why she wanted to become Precure. She wanted to become someone different, which is something I feel like I've talked about in every episode of the Nono show so far, is the idea of like characters wanting to become a magical girl as a desire to change themselves, but ultimately like learning that they have to change on their own without, Lala didn't change because she became a magical girl. She changed because of like the story and the arc, and going back home and seeing how like the ways she was different were able to like help out her and she got noticed because like, oh wait, you have these differences from us, but actually like because of those differences, you're able to help us during this crisis situation that we wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And that idea kind of recurs about throughout some of the other characters too, like that's part of why I like the transformation sequence, because one of the lines is about like drawing the self you want to be. And, like, Lala wanted, to fit in more at home, but she ended up fitting in more at Earth. And that helped her change and grow. Madoka was thought to be, like, this, like, whenever the aliens would come up, her father would be like, she'd lie, and her father, like, because he trusts Madoka so much and how he raised her, he just accepted her word, like, completely at face value and didn't think about it because he trusted her so much. So, like, Madoka was kind of insecure about, like, because she knows she's not perfect, and she's lying to her dad about, like, his job, and something that could help him, but also would endanger her friends. So, like, the self she imagines isn't, or she kind of wants to be, isn't necessarily who she actually is, until she realizes that, like, she's fine as she is, or Elena not fitting in. And like, or also, like, with her conflict in the end is she wanted to help her family and be at home, because, like, she's the older sister, so she has to kind of have that responsibility. Her mom's always busy. Like, her dad that manages a flower shop, like, so she has to help too, but she also wants to become become an interpreter like her mother. And so, like, that would be something that would keep her away from her family. And so, like, like the fake smile, like, she's hindering herself to help her family because, she feels like she's needed there. And again, you have this conflict of, like, what she wants to do with what she's actually doing, and kind of, like, the self she wants to be, sort of, or the self she wants to be and the self she thinks she needs to be, might be another way to put it. And just, like, the way that, the arcs kind of came together, and, like, where instead of, like, imagining a different self, they end up, like, well, because another sort of factor to the conflict is, like, understanding, where, like, and I think this is a really good message to have, and one of the reasons I like the show is because, like, because, I've heard, or at least the idea, like, with, say, scientists, where it's like, oh, they take the magic out of things, where it's like, because they have to take it apart, like, they can't just appreciate the beauty of a flower, they have to take apart the flower to understand it, or a rainbow, like, and I have a friend who's really into science, and I've actually talked about this idea, and we both agree that it's like, understanding things better doesn't limit imagination, it makes things more amazing. Like, I described rainbows as it's light being splintered through, like, water droplets. That's fucking cool. Right? Uh-huh. And that's kind of a similar bend that this show does take, where it's like, imagination is furthered by understanding, and like the the way that the not raiders are kind of they're like, they don't have a place in the world, they don't have a home, which is also, Elena felt out of place, Lala felt out of place at her home, and the not raiders were kind, they all had their conflicts, like Tenjo didn't have a nose, or a long nose, like all the other people on her home planet. So she didn't fit in. And then, like, they couldn't imagine themselves fitting in and having a home with the way they were, because they were different. Kind of, which is, why they were really good contrasts with the Cures later. I was going somewhere with that, and then a fucking motorcycle ran by. And
well, I know, like, I'm also thinking back, you had made that comment about Lala, and how, like, the characters, like, wanting to change themselves, but also, like, being the version of themselves that they want to be. And something that I'd also thought of, in the context of the whole, like, imagination thing. Something I liked about Uni was the fact that, like, she had these different disguises that she would use. Like, she was always transforming herself, and taking on these different personas, whether she was Blue Cat, the thief, or what was it? Mao, yes. the idol, or
who
Bakenyan, the one
yes.
who betrayed Iwan.
Yeah, right.
And so I don't remember what my specific thought was at the time, because I thought I had, like, another character parallel with that, like the whole thing of, like, imagination and characters, like, changing themselves, or, like, I don't know. I can't remember what the connection was.
I'll keep talking, because I remember what I was trying to get to. Because, basically the idea that, again, used to, understanding things only, like, furthers the possibility for imagination, which is something I agree with. And so the way the show kind of used it, where, like, like, in one of the early episodes, Hikaru was fighting Cuphard, and she was, like, trying to say the universe is great, but Cuphard, you don't understand my darkness. He's gone through these sufferings and seen bad things that Hikaru doesn't understand. So she's has a difficulty connecting with him, because she she's trying to imagine the ideal, but there's not enough reality there to convince Cup hard. And that kind of recurs throughout the show too, especially in the earlier parts. I remember it, like the episode with Hikaru's mom, where she's trying to, make her manga, and she's like trying to make manga that more people will enjoy, but then it turns out, because she thinks that's what everyone else will want. But as it turns out, like, by making what she wants, she's actually able to connect to a bigger audience that way. Or with Elena's brother, the older...
Oh, that was the thing I was thinking of.
Oh, okay.
How, like, creativity. So it was a way of, like, with, like, the chapter focusing on the mom and her manga, that was, like, imagination from, like, a creative sort of, like, output. Like, it's more internal and less external, whereas like with Uni, her like changing forms and taking on these different identities, it was more of like an external showcase of that imagination.
Well, and with Uni, it's also kind of interesting because she's a character who has no place in the world because her home was taken from her. So to fit in, she kind of took on all these personas, and that's kind of called out, like, oh, you're fake, you're just you're making it, or like that was with the I think with the dog cop, Anne, that was her name, because she also made a disguise, and she's like calling out like Blue Cat for it, but she did it too, like, oh, so it's fine if it's for justice, but another conflict was with like I was gonna say, with Toma, Elena's brother. Like, he thought his family was weird because normal people don't randomly dance, because they do, and so like he felt a bit at odds with his family, and because they weren't quote unquote normal, and like they're, the dad's straight up foreign, and so the children are all half, non-Japanese, and so like they don't fit into otherwise a really hegemonic country, and but it's framed, but he's able to accept it when Lala helps him understand, because she compares it to her home planet, and like grounds it in grounds the weirdness in reality and makes it more palatable, and like I don't know, I just liked how that idea was sort of gone throughout the show, because like at the end they do, the Not Raiders ended up where they were because no one tried to understand them and make them more accepted at home, which and that happened with like Lala with her home planet, and stuff like that, and just like, but they're able to find their home because they're able to connect with people and come to imagine visualize a world that they can fit into, even without necessarily having to change. And I just like, especially the episode where Lala gets revealed to the class as being an alien and a Precure. And where like she everyone she because again she wanted to be different because she didn't fit in, but everyone accepted her as a Saman alien, on an Earthling, as a Precure. Just they accepted Lala for being Lala, and it's just like, it's really good.
I also thought that was interesting. The fact that like the characters as being Precure, like, I don't know how every series handles it, like whether it's like sometimes there's like, oh, the supporting characters are like aware of Precure, but it's like a myth thing. Or it's like this thing that's like, oh, we've never seen it in person. But like with Star Twinkle, a lot of the adventures as Precure happen outside of Earth, or they're hidden away. But it very much makes sense that would be brought to light, that the character, because it's with the series being focused on all these species from outside Earth, and focusing a lot on like the vastness, the outsiders, the foreign, it makes sense that like that, the characters were kind of existing outside of like their own reality. That might not be the way I want to phrase it, but close enough. But then the fact that like the reality comes back in the end, and like they have to interconnect, because like that's the whole point of the series, is that like it's taking the things that are foreign, both in like a metaphorical sense of like the things you don't understand, the ability to change, imagination, that sort of thing, and then like the more literal of like these aliens, these creatures from other planets, and like tying it all in together. That Lala gets accepted, like, oh, okay, you might not be an Earthling, but you're still our classmate, and and it's a very good episode.
Yeah, and it was I liked when Elena's stuff came into play too, because like, she's half Mexican, and like usually in general, like having literal aliens is meant to be in fiction is meant to be like a metaphor for
Yeah.
foreigners. Like I've heard it compared like Superman. That's I've heard that talked about with him. But so for Elena, she's literally like she grew up in Japan, but she's ethnicity wise, she's not totally Japanese, and that was an insecurity growing up. And and that was, and they literally compared that with Tenjo, who's a literal alien, and you have Lala, who's an outsider completely, an alien, but still like a foreigner in that sense.
I was definitely interested, like from the outset, because I think she's the first POC, the first precure of color, if you will. But no, like from like the character design, like she is the first character. And so like I was interested to see if, I think
I can't
for
think of any.
precure.
I'd have to like check through.
Maybe I'm
like,
wrong.
There might be one like foreigner, like I don't know. That's a good. I don't, because at least in the series that I've seen, they're all okay. So Futaro, they're both Japanese. Heartcatch Precure, they're all Japanese. Precure a la mode, there's one who's not human, and like she kind of has French origins, but also she's not human in the first place, so it's like it's gray area. And then Star Twinkle, Healing Good, one's not even human. So basically the only ones who aren't they're non-human, and then like Elena's just straight up like not she has darker skin, so yeah.
Discord completely cut out there for a second, so I'm like, yeah, I think I know where he's going with this, so I'm just gonna agree.
I was just listening to the precursors I know, but Elena's the only one, who doesn't have light-colored skin. Yeah.
I was interested to see if that would come up at all, or like how they might, and like they did end up integrating it pretty well, but it's not like in a very, it's more like in an underspoken, more subtle kind of way. And I did really like how once the parallels with the villains started being drawn, I did really like the episode where she has to do her speech, and she's talking about, because it again, especially later when you learn more about like why does she put on this smile, and so like she learns something from Tenjo, because Tenjo's like, oh, you shouldn't be all happy-go-lucky. You should be talking about like all this, like these people made you suffer.
Well, she was used to deceit on her planet because everyone had these fake smiles, and she saw the same thing in Elena, who was also
there's like, in a sense that like she's wrong, because like Elena had like the optimism. She was wrong that optimism was a bad thing, but like from her perspective of like you need to let these people know, like, channel the darkness inside of you, and like, didn't they treat you wrong or whatever? And then she's like, yeah, you're right. And so like with her speech, she ends up incorporating that, and it gives her a better appreciation for the smiles, and like why she puts on that smile, and why she likes to see other people connect and have this mutual understanding. And so it was like, the villain digging into that darkness ended up like making her better. And then obviously it gets built on in the following episode, where we learn more about Tenjo, and Elena then is able to make that connection because, in a way, like Tenjo calling out Elena's, like her past, and how like, oh, surely you have some sort of like evil within you, or like some sort of negative emotion, like that helps Elena like make the connection to Tenjo, because she's like, yeah, you know what, I did have this period in my life where I felt kind of like an outcast, like I didn't really belong, but then like, I just kept smiling, and like I made these connections, and things got better, and then she was able to make the connection with Tenjo and make her smile. And I did like how in all of the episodes where the characters unlocked their Star Twinkle imagination, I forget what they called it.
Maybe that was it.
Oh, that was it? Okay.
Or it was just Twinkle Imagination.
Twinkle Imagination.
But
yeah, like they all had this line where it's like, I want to do something. For Uni, it was about like wanting to reach the future together. Lala wanted to be herself. And then for Elena, she wanted to see other people smile. She wanted to see Tenjo smile. And it was It was very good.
Yeah, and it
like
was
I
also
said,
nice,
once they started
yeah.
drawing the very blatant character parallels, maybe it was more subtle in the beginning. I'm not sure.
Well, like,
but,
I mean, the
it
one I
worked
can
well.
definitely think of is, like, Tenjo's design always had, like, she had
she always
the
had
nose.
that mask.
And, right, so as an alien, they could have just given her a long nose as a Tengu, but they deliberately didn't, and that worked really, like, regardless of whether they planned it or not. Like,
Yeah.
but that's, like, probably the most clear example of, like, aside from Iwan, as we mentioned earlier, of like, here's the parallel to, or at least like something that could be used for, was eventually used for that parallel.
And it
right?
did also work really well because like Elena's mask was her smile, and then Tenjo had the mask with the nose, and so it does again like draw that parallel, and it
was also really
it all
good
wrapped up
when
very well.
After the Not Raiders betrayed Dark Nest, and Tenjo talked to Elena, and Tenjo smiled a little bit, and I'm like,
yeah.
And then there was Monica's episode, which that was the one that made you cry, I believe, right? A little. Or
Well,
tear
it didn't
up a little
make
bit?
me like cry,
Oh, no.
but I did get teary-eyed. I did get choked up. I did feel emotions.
Yeah, well, because like that was one of the ones where like we just get a little bit of context, and it's like, oh, because I forget his name, the ogre guy. He's talking about he's drawing a sort of parent connection to Darkness, like Monica has with her dad, and that's like, it's just oh, there it is, okay, because that's again a character where it's like, I don't remember what was built up to, like, I mean, he was always had this reliance on the power that he was given by Darkness. But that once it was framed that way, I was just like, oh, fuck, there it is. And of course, then Monica seeing like the more extreme version of herself in him made her change and realize what she really wanted, and to do things her own, like as she wanted, instead of just because that was what her dad wanted for her.
Yeah.
And it was good. Like all the
and then the moment at the end. But yeah, like the thing at the end where they drew the connection to like the one small step for man, like the moon landing.
Monica, the moon, Kirsillan, who has always been the moon of the school, and
it had been foreshadowed all along. But yeah, it was really good because then like you had the her like, she walks out onto the balcony and it's like she's flying up to the moon, and it's like
because she's finally making steps on her own, and it's,
yes,
it was all like. And that's again where it's like, was it there from the beginning? Probably, because like the way it was built up to, or at least like, worked, was really good. So,
and it is also cool. Again, like a thing that was very clear, the sun and the moon of the school, her and Elena, they kind of have these inverting dynamics where like she is the one who is like, oh, you're destined to, travel out. You have to go on this like, what was it called? I don't remember, but like she has to go like out of the country for her like high school, and I can't think of the term, but it's mentioned. But like her exchange trip or whatever, like you have to venture far out and do this thing because you are a member of this family, and that is what you need to do. But she like thinks on that, and she's like, I'm not gonna lie to myself. I'm going to, pursue the things that I want to pursue, and she ends up staying in the area, whereas like Elena had always been tied down to the area with her family, and she always felt this need to help them out because, her mom was busy with work, her dad had things going on. So in a way, like, that is the inversion. Like, Madoka, who is destined to go far out into the world, ends up staying closer to home and focusing on because that's what she wants to do. Whereas Elena, then, she's the one who goes out into the world and is able to kind of venture off on her own.
Right. She leaves the family. Well, like, and when she, actually like opens up about how she feels and drops her fake smile, like the rest of the family like steps out, like her siblings who she's been providing, like they're getting older, they're able to help around more now, and like
so and the little bit where the younger brother is like, oh, I'll help with the cooking, and then he like immediately burns something, and she's just got this smug look on her face. It's good.
Yeah. And then Hikaru also, like how she got like, because she was just kind of feeling like down because everyone around her was changing, where she kind like she's really static, which I really worked for Star Twinkle, but that it was kind of interesting to see, because like where she's like everyone around her is shining, but she had to accept that she just because everyone else is like finding themselves doesn't mean like there's nothing wrong with her, just because she hasn't done that yet. But anyway, I guess we can talk about the ending, because the ending had some really good shit. Or was there any other? Or I guess we didn't talk about Uni that much.
I did I think her dynamic with Iwan was one of the like earliest to be set up, and it was kind of pretty I won't say obvious where it was going, but obvious that it was a parallel, I guess.
Yeah, so like, well, they did like, oh, Iwan doesn't have a home anymore because of what the she got kicked out of the Not, like she went to the Not Raiders because of what she didn't have, and then she didn't even have them, so she was just angry towards Uni, and Uni ended up forgiving her because like, oh, she recognized that they were similar, and Uni wasn't bent on this vengeance like she was, so she kind of like tried to give that option for Iwan, and
yeah. I did like where it went. I thought there was a degree to which their dynamic was a little, I don't know if like undercooked is the word, but like the fact that like when we see what Iwan did and how she like turned everybody to stone, it seemed very much out of like ignorance and I don't know, like I don't know. I forget what it was specifically.
Well, I don't remember that part as well
of...
because I didn't watch it recently like you did.
Oh,
like,
that's true.
Yeah, so for me, well, like another thing with Uni for me is that like she's not integrated as well into the cast, if that makes sense. Like she doesn't go to school.
She doesn't go to school. And what I did think there were interesting moments with that where like she did get to interact with the cast. Like the part where she meets up with Elena's family and her father is just like, "Oh, who's this? Nice to meet you," and just like gives her a hug because that's who he is, and she's just like, "What's happening?"
She's a cat. She doesn't like being pet or touched, or she's just as confused.
And I think something happens later where she like shows up. Oh, she shows up because they have to do the Precure transformation, and it's the same time that Lala gets accepted by the school, and she just kind of she shows up, and they're like, "Who's this person? She's here now."
Right. Yeah, and it's like, and I definitely feel like maybe that limit her a bit, because like I do have this, because I don't just watch Precure, I also watch Super Sentai, which is structured very similarly in that like around the middle of the season they get a mid-season ranger who's or the sixth ranger as they're also sometimes called, even if they're not always the sixth, and so like depending on how they're integrated into the story, definitely like affect, like, because if they interact, it just makes sense. If they interact with more of the cast, I'm probably going to like them more because I'll see more of their character as they interact. And if they don't integrate very well, then it also kind of begs, like, like Uni didn't, like the worst I've seen in Super Sentai is where like I feel like most of the time they just come in at the end of the conflict to take part in the Megazord battle, and like so it's like they're less of a character and they're more just there to be part of the fighting. And like that's kind of what Uni felt like in that episode with the Lala stuff, where she just comes in at the end to fight,
Yeah.
And maybe there were other episodes like that, but because of that, it would have been a bit forced to have her go to school when that's not in character. Yeah, but then it's like, I don't know, I wouldn't mind seeing her interact with more of the other characters, and that would have maybe endeared me to her more when, right now she's probably like one of my least favorite in the cast. So, what were you going to say?
Well, like that's definitely a possibility, and I feel like her bouncing off of the rest of the cast could have been interesting. Mm-hmm. I do think there was something kind of interesting in her being the outsider, like even once she was acclimated to the group, like she was still
like I'm not saying it's bad for a character, because like again, part of her thing is like she doesn't have a home, so it makes sense that like she still sees her home planet as her home that she's trying to get back, so it makes sense that she wouldn't connect completely to the Cures, but I don't know, maybe that also could have been part of her arc where she gets close, she's able to get close to them, but I don't know.
I did also think, there were just some fun antics when she was involved. Like they do the, what's it called? The festival thingy, the one where they show up in like the robes. I can't remember what it's called. It's a very specific thing, but I don't remember. Anyway, they do like a festival thing, and there are like all these games and stuff, and there's like the thing where it's like, oh, you can scoop the goldfish, and she's like, those are tasty.
Summer festival, that's right.
Yeah, summer festival, yeah. And so like there's like that one frame in particular where it's like just her eyes and like the mouth, and she's like, like, yeah. But yeah, at the end of that episode, she talks to Lala, because like, like they're at the festival and they're all having fun, and she's like, I don't really feel like I belong here. And she's like, well, don't you have other things going on? Like you're not an Earthling. And she's concerned about like all these other worldly things, but Lala is able to like make the connection to her and be like, hey, you know, these people accepted me even though I was an outsider. And the line about like the universe inside your heart expands infinitely thanks to the people around you. And it's like, yeah, it was very good. I think maybe more so for Lala's character, because we see like how far she's come from the start of the series, and this is kind of like the midpoint where now she is the one passing the torch and like extending the torch of kindness to this other outsider
that she was previously extended to in the past. And Uni definitely had good stuff, but I definitely like I guess she just left me wanting more than the other characters, where even Madoka, who I also wasn't super into, like, at least I can see enough there with her that I really liked, where, Uni is just like, maybe she could have been, because I did like her stuff at the beginning when she was, like, this recurring side character, but that's a little different than, like, a Precure, you know? Like, how I see that, but, I guess before we talk about the ending, if we didn't have any more on Blue Cat, the movie.
Yeah, the movie, which completely let me down as far as my aesthetic character goes.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
She was introduced to be a character in this movie, and all she does is just
keep Uni out of it for some reason. Yeah.
And then take care of the villains so the other Precure can go and actually do the plot things. And she just doesn't get she doesn't get any screen time. Like, I think of like if she's like a movie character, I think like, oh, maybe she'll be part of the conflict, maybe she'll be like a focal character. She wasn't. No.
I mentioned it to you this before when we talked about it, but like part of why she's so good as a foil for Uni is because she's a dog cop to the cat thief, and there's one point like in the episode she sniffs out like, oh, you're in disguise, because Uni uses a perfume disguise. That's her, she has perfume power, and that's how she like makes her disguises. But so the dog sniffed her out, and it just like makes sense, and it's really like into their just like as an alien, and just it fits really well. So it is pretty disappointing that she's not used more.
Yeah, and like again that line about like, oh, are disguises and tricks okay when they're for justice? So it's a sense like I feel like she could have been a really cool like recurring character to like maybe it would have
Precure.
Well,
no, I'm kidding.
Not the sixth Precure, but like again, like if we're both kind of agreeing that like, maybe there was more that could have been done with Uni, maybe having like another I mean, she had Iwan, so like I guess, but another potential, I don't know. Maybe again, it's just the dog girl. She's cute. She's a dumbass, but she tries really hard. Maybe that's all I need. Maybe that's why she
a dumbass dog girl instead of a dumbass cat boy. That's why she's aesthetic. I gotcha. It all fits together now. But I don't know. The movie was like fun, and really like the one sequence I liked enough to rewatch was when they went and showed Yuma the Earth, basically. And just all the cool places on Earth, because like I'd seen like pictures of a lot of these places, but it was neat to see them visualized in animation. And it just like it looked really visually cool. The soundtrack, I love that track. It might be one of my favorites on because I have it downloaded.
Yeah, Star Twinkle had good music too. Yeah. Now that I think about it,
because I have the soundtrack and I listened to it. I also have the All Mode soundtrack, but I've been listening to the Star Twinkle one more often, and I think it might be because it's just really good. While writing my Precure fanfic, which I hope will see the light of day one day. But I just want to mention, because I try to listen to the music, so...
You just need to channel the power of imagination.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, that I just wanted to bring that up, because like, it just looks... Like, there's the whale... It's like animals are harder to draw, and it was like neatly animated with its like slight rotation as it like jumped out. It's just a cool looking sequence. The music's really good, and as for the movie as a whole, like I just I had some fun with it. Like it wasn't amazing outside of like the production, like I don't know. Well, I was gonna make a joke about how like Yuma is like, oh, this is my mom, Lala, and this is my other mom, Hikaru, and then we see Yuma in her more human form at the end, and she literally looks like a combination of Hikaru and Lala, so they weren't even being subtle about it. So I thought that was funny. And I don't know, it was just a fun movie. Like I kind of liked how the climax of the movie was the song, the end, which was used as the ending song for some of the episodes, and that was them reaching out
as soon
to
as
Yuma.
as soon as they started using it for the ED, like as the ED for a couple of episodes, I was like, well, if nothing else, at least the movie will have a good song, because this is pretty good.
Yeah, and it was they got cool new dresses with the constellations for the action sequences, and but that wasn't the climax. They just beat up the guys, and there was some cool action, and then they did the song, and it was the actual climax of the movie, and it was fun, and I enjoyed it a lot, and I was satisfied. So
I guess what my kind of like general thoughts on it were, especially like just coming off of Do Re Mi Sharp, which also had a quote unquote movie, which is basically just like a slightly longer TV episode
and much more well produced episode. Yeah.
Well, and like the thing with that was like that felt like a really good encapsulation of like what makes Do Re Mi great. It was like a really good like if you showed somebody this who did not know Do Re Mi, like that's like I feel like it gives you like a really good picture of like this is what Do Re Mi is capable of. You know, it really captures the appeal well as far as like characterization and the sense of humor and that sort of thing. But like with Star Twinkle, this didn't feel like it captured the best of what the series offered. It just kind of felt like a fun little side adventure.
Yeah, production-wise, maybe it did, like just like I said with the music and visuals, but as far as like character stuff, not really. Yeah.
Because like the dynamic with Yuma, and like the first little bit of the movie is kind of focused on Lala, like. There's like a disconnect between her and Yuma, but then eventually, like, you know, she gets over it and she's able to like connect.
I mentioned I saved all the pictures of Lala bullying, and like 90% of it was from Yuma. So it's just it was funny.
Yeah. But like I don't feel like I really like learned much about their dynamic in that time. Like I mean we see them kind of like grow attached to each other, which is important because by the end of the movie, Lala's the main one who's like, no, we can't let her go. But, you know, Hikaru is the one who has to kind of like convince Lala, like, no, this is for the best. But I don't know. Like, I didn't, you know, I'm glad I watched the movie. I didn't feel like it was a waste of time.
Yeah, but it definitely doesn't like add or reflect to the conflict like the Ojumaja Do Re Mi movie or
yeah, and like that's not even to say that because like the Do Re Mi movie, you could argue has like I don't know if I'd say quote unquote like essential plot information, but it does give you more information on like the backstory of the characters. And it is
referenced like in the episode I watched after the movie, like they literally reference the movie and and you even see like a brief flashback scene to it. So it's like
whereas like the only thing Star Twinkle does like that ties into this movie is the episode before where you know Anna gets introduced and she crash lands into the moon, and then at the start of the movie she shows up in the middle of the fight. But there's not much that like here was a character beat that will be referenced later.
Right, like it does. If you just watch that episode and then you watch the next episode, there would be no difference. Like
so
maybe
it's not like a fair comparison in that regard because one very clearly is meant to be more of like there was more of a connection to the main series in mind as opposed to this one, which is not to say that it's disconnected from the series, but like. I don't know. It's much more self-contained, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it was still good. But I guess you don't have to go out of your way to watch it, especially if you're not enjoying Star Twinkle. But I thought it was worth my time. So yeah.
I know definitely from my perspective. I already harped on this. This obviously doesn't mean anything. You can strike it from the record. It's not any judgment of quality, but the fact that I was looking forward to it because it had the character from the previous episode, and then it did nothing with her.
That's why Mathwas would have given it like a 6 or a 7, but they squandered the Dog Girl 5 out of 10. Bad show. Don't watch it.
Not like, bad.
That's
just
probably
mid.
The funniest thing because I feel like
5
a lot
out of 10
of
is very average.
That's the funny thing. It's like we're saying very similar things about it, but I just feel way more strong. I don't know. I just liked it, and you didn't. I don't. Okay, like it's not like Kinnikuman where you're like we also had a big score discrepancy, but I'm talking about it, and you're like. Like, I don't know. I just think it's funny that even though we have a similar difference in feelings, somehow we don't. If that makes sense.
Yeah, like at the very least, like I can understand where you're coming from, even if it's like it might not have personally resonated with me, but like theoretically, conceptually, like I get it.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's probably, and we're able to appreciate that even if we don't like it. So yeah, I gotcha. Because like you said, it only made you like a little teary. With like Monika's episode, funnily enough, that was the one that didn't get me. But Elena's and Lala's and the ending, like both the ending episodes, and like occasional spots, even like I said, a random transformation in one of the early episodes. Like I got to when the ended credits of the movie started playing, like I kept getting teary eyed like a bunch of times throughout the series, and I'm like, what is this show? Like I don't why like, because if I were to compare the casts, like, as far as like aside from Futari, I would say like Star Twinkle might be my least favorite cast. But I also, it's my least favorite show of the other four. But the difference is that the other the other three, because I still like it more than Futari. But I give Star Twinkle an 8, where I give Alamode, Heartcatch, and Hugto a 9. So
basically, what you're saying is Precure doesn't miss. Like even when it misses, it's still like right on target.
Yeah, like Futari, like I would be tempted to say it was mid, but I still think it did really interesting stuff, and I want to do a video on it when I watch Max Heart. So it's like, Precure, maybe Precure doesn't miss. Like, yeah, I've actually realized this lately, because I've as far as like 50 episode iterative franchises, like I've been watching Ultraman and Kamen Rider and Super Sentai, and Precure is most consistently like I like it more. Like even so, I've realized like shit, I gotta watch more Precure. Because if out of 5 series, the lowest score I've given is a 7. What's wrong? Am I okay? Like, where are the bad seasons? Because Alamode isn't very well liked. Star Twinkle, I don't think I'm sure has mixed reception. Like, I don't know. I'm not supposed to be liking these ones, but I do. Like, Heartcatch is like a fan favorite, and it's like my 3rd favorite out of the 5 I've seen. So I don't know. But anyway, on to the ending. So we kind of mentioned this before, but how they use the transformation song.
Yeah, like that alone made the whole thing worth it. Like on top, I mean, obviously they had done other things musically with that track, different renditions of it. Mm-hmm. I feel like in the last like 2 episodes or whatever, like if you told me that every track that played was a different rendition of that song, I'd believe you, and it was like great. Right, because I definitely recognized at least like 2 or 3 tracks that were that song, but just in like a different instrumental or whatever it may be, and I was like, holy crap, they're really getting a lot of mileage out of this song, and I'm vibing with it.
Yeah, and like when Hikaru, like they couldn't transform and Hikaru just starts singing the song, I not only did I start crying, but I was like, this is why they made it like a musical transformation, so that they could fucking do this, because and like, because that's when the lyrics really came into play, and they transformed even though they weren't because of their like Darkness Demons, she's like, oh, your imagination just came from the princesses, but it's like, no, that's not how it works, because it's inherently creative and personal, so it's their imagination, even if like because they brought up with the constellations, and that was like the twist where it's like, oh, every planet has the 12 constellations because they're the kind of creators of the universe. So like everyone, because it was brought up when Hikaru was with the guy who owns the observatory, the old guy, and like he kind of inspired her because he's like, oh, constellations, like, we everyone can see them differently, and Hikaru would draw her own because, she used the sky as a sort of like creative space, but at the same time, like, oh, every planet has these designated, like, because like the zodiac, so therefore it's not really that creative because everyone has it, but then it's like, no, it's our imagination, and they transform on their own. It's really good. I wanted to ask, because I got spoiled. Did you see the Ophiuchus twist coming at all, or
wait, the
reveal, the Ophiuchus reveal that the Darkness was actually the 13th princess? Because Ophiuchus is
I wasn't
like
spoiled on it, but I didn't feel like if I was spoiled, it wouldn't have mattered much. Like I almost kind of. It's not that I like felt like, oh, why did they even bother disguising her in the first place? Because like I get it from like an in-universe perspective that like, oh, she doesn't want to be found out, so she kind of takes on this darkness incarnate. I will say I wasn't a fan of like the voice filter they used. It was just very like, I don't know. I was just like, I knew that I figured they were gonna do some sort of like this isn't even my final form. But yeah, like it happened, and I guess like I don't know. I didn't feel like if it was spoiled, which for me it wasn't. But I feel like even if it was, it wouldn't have like changed anything about my opinion on the.
Yeah, no, I just asked because I didn't get that chance to see if how, because I don't think I would either, but I didn't get the chance because I knew about it between, like, when I put down the show about halfway through and before I picked it back up to record this, basically. So, like, of course, when I started watching it, I'm like, oh yeah, Darkness obviously has a snake motif, so of course. But, yeah, so, but I didn't get the chance to, be surprised in any fashion. Like, yeah, does it like recontextualize? Yeah, recontextualize some stuff is at least what they go into. But yeah, Darkness is probably not my favorite main antagonist in the series. Like, she's fine and she works. But she's not George. And
yeah. See, and I'm doing it again where like I mentioned Hugto, but like it's important for like my like perspective on the series because like in Hugto it was like a revolving door of antagonists. Like you would get, it wasn't just like one antagonist per episode, but you would get like a couple different little arcs for the characters, but it was like one character's done, okay, we move on to the next one, and then we move on to the next one, and so there was a sense of like progression. And so maybe that's why I felt with Star Twinkle, because like at the end of the day I did like how, and again it's like the aesthetics of the series, the messages of the series, the 5 points of a star, the fact that there were 5 cure, 5 villains, they, contrast each other, it makes sense. And so the fact that like they all kept showing up throughout the series, like this is a case where that framework worked for this series, whereas like with Hugto, having the revolving door worked better for how it was trying to tell its story, because then we got, in that case we had more time to see like what the minor antagonists would get up to later in the series, so we'd get maybe like a chance to see them develop in that regard. Whereas like
right, like yeah.
I think this is though where I feel like, not that I dislike how Star Twinkle did it because I just made a case for it, but like if there had been like more obvious foreshadowing, like maybe there was subtle foreshadowing and I'd appreciate it more later. That's a possibility. Like now that I know where the series went, maybe I'd notice more subtle hints earlier on. But
coming next time on the Nono Show, we're just going to rewatch Star Twinkle Precure and discuss it again. No, I'm kidding.
The rewatch arc. We go through the big 3 again. We go through Precure again. But yeah, so that was like the only thing I maybe had against Star Twinkle, was that like it didn't feel like there was it didn't feel like the early material had enough momentum. Even though the ending delivered really well, it just feel like if that maybe could have been spread out more somehow, but I don't know how they would have done that. I will also say that like the ending with Iwan, the fact that she comes back, like she is that kind of one character who had her moment earlier in the series and then gets a chance to kind of like be the protagonist in a way, like or an ally to the protagonist, and she does stuff. And she becomes a tsundere. Like she's very like, I'm sorry, and she's like very shy around Uni afterwards. Which again, like the thing is that like her turning all the people to stone, it seemed like it was more of like not intentional. Like, oh, I'm going to commit genocide on this group of people. Like she just seemed like she was just kind of like an ignorant, manipulated child, and so like she is able to grow from that. And then by the end, we get the pastel goth tsundere Cyclops. And so, yeah, it was neat.
Yeah. And I also like how they basically like beat the main antagonist in the second to last episode, and then you get like a whole episode of like resolution. Because
I wanted to go back and rewatch the final episode of Hugto, because like there are obviously things that like now that this is my second series, I figure that's just what Precure does. The time skip, you get the kind of little last hurrah where like the characters get together and they fight a villain of the week for the final episode. The passing of the Cure. Because you get the next series, Cure shows up on a passing connection, and of course that I'd imagine was different for you too, because you have been watching Heal and Good, so you already know this character.
Well, this
and
was
you've
the
been
first
following
time.
them.
Yeah, because I've seen at the end of a la mode, Hana shows up at the end of Hugto.
Yeah.
Hikaru shows up, and at the end of Star Twinkle, Nodoka shows up. But this is the first time I've seen the ending of this, like, I know Nodoka now because I've watched 20 plus episodes of Healing Good Precure. So this is the first time I knew that cure, where before, like, I didn't start Star Twinkle until after I finished Hugto. I didn't start Hugto until after I finished Precure a la mode. So in those cases, my first experience was in the previous show, but in this case, my first experience with Nodoka was the first episode of Healing Good, and then she just shows up, and I'm like, yay! Because I know her. I know how good of a girl she is.
But so, like, I think, kind of part of why I brought that up, too, is, like, I expected the next Precure to show up, because I was like, oh, Hugto did it, so that must just be a Precure thing.
Well,
I did not know that, like, the
oh,
time skip would happen. I did not expect the time skip, so I'm not sure if that is just a Precure thing.
Well, it would be a modern Precure thing, because I don't know exactly what changed, but around Go Princess and Mahosukai is also when you start getting the three-way crossovers, like, where they bring it back the other two series, and
I remember that in Hugto when you had the crossovers, like the a la mode cast was like aged up. It was like their later designs.
Right, because there was a time skip there. It was shorter compared to the Star Twinkle one, but yeah, there was a time skip in the last episode, and yeah, that was, like you said, that was the same for Hugto. Though I don't know about Mahosukai because they also got aged down in the Hugto Precure, but they didn't get aged down as much, it looked like. Or at least they didn't look older compared to the a la mode characters who were basically adults. And of course for any series before that, they don't get aged. They're all the same ages as they were. Don't think about it. Don't think about Precure continuity. Like, because I even mentioned, because we were even wondering about the crossovers during the Hugto discussion, where it's like at the end of Hugto, Lulu goes back to the future. And so wait, I even made a joke. It's like, oh, for every crossover, she's just gonna like stop on the way to the future so that she could take part in it and just like have all these detours. But no, like, because I watched the movie, the Star Twinkle, which was not as good as the regular Star Twinkle movie. The crossover the production wasn't that good. And they just show up, like the portal shows up and all the Hugto precures fall out. And don't worry about it. But
like, there's also the sense that, like, oh, because the character shows up in the final episode, that it's like, oh, so they're all interconnected, like they're all in the same universe. But it's like, wait a minute, but then is this happening on one side of the planet, and then you got these other characters doing something else, but they're all in Japan, so like, what's that?
Right, and then like, yeah, they don't really recognize other. Like I've heard, I think it's Happiness Charge, where like precures are not only unknown, but they're like an international thing. Like how I've heard it doesn't really utilize it enough, but it definitely like it's like basically it doesn't matter. It matters for the individual season, and then it can also cross over. Fuck it, don't think about it. Basically, is their stance. And well, though I was gonna say, like, the meeting with Nodoka wasn't even real; it was a dream.
Yeah, that's right. That twist where it's like, oh, I dreamt about it. Like, we all met up again, and so I was like, oh, cool. So they were able, because like with how episode 48 leaves off, this was the part that I did not remember. The fact that like the pendant was what was like translating for
Lala.
No,
that was
because I was like, no, she could always speak the same language as the characters. What are you talking about? You made that up on the spot. And then I went back and watched episode 1, and I'm like, oh, she can't. Oh.
Yeah, no, I forgot about it until it brought up, and I was like, oh yeah, that was how but she still said, thank you, or are oh, and in
said
general,
Hikaru's name, and yeah.
And the last part of the show, because I kind of knew about I kind of expected it to happen because I was semi-spoiled. Like I knew Hikaru about the astronaut Hikaru thing. And so I kind of figured that, like, okay, why would she need to become an astronaut? Because she needs to go to space. Why would she need to go to space? To find Lala or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I kind of saw that coming on a level, but I still really love how it was handled. Because
time skips are never fair, because it's always like you think about like the implications of that, like, oh, these characters were separated this whole time, that's so sad. But then like where it ends, it's on the hopeful note, but we don't get to see the results, and so it's like not fair. Like,
Star Twinkle might have my favorite ending of a Precure season.
It's pretty good.
Hugto's was really good, but like remembering back, I'm like, at least during Star Twinkles, I wasn't like, there's a childbirth going on. Like,
yeah, like I will say the thing with like, I remember I had some complaints about Hugto's ending too, but like now that I've had more time to think about it, I think like when I rewatch it, I'll like appreciate it better.
Yeah,
But
no,
like with
I
Star
definitely
Twinkle, I
wanna,
was just
yeah.
like, yeah, this is a pretty good ending.
Yeah, well, because I want to rewatch a la mode because it might be a favorite of mine, and Hugto because I want to rewatch it after I've watched all of Precure, so I can watch the crossover movies and get full
Yeah.
appreciation of the crossover episodes. So I'll have a chance. But right now, Star Twinkle might be my favorite because I thought it was really good how it handled. Like, yeah, when the dream sequence was happening, I was like, this is kind of weird, and it revealed to be a dream, and I'm like, fuck. But no, Elena and Monica, they're all adults now, and they're all trying to work to go back to space and connect with all, and then Hikaru does. And well, like, I like how the ending is handled because it's like we don't see Fua and Lala, but we hear,
Yeah.
we have enough understanding of the show that we can imagine it. Like it leaves it to us basically, and I thought that was a really apt handling of it, and
I thought it was also really neat how it kind of recontextualizes what all they had been doing up to that point, because they had this magical spaceship from Lala, who was not of planet Earth. So like they were able to go out and visit space and all these different have all these different experiences, meet all these different people, but it like wasn't like without Lala there, and once they were disconnected and once they were no longer Precure, that was not something they had the technology to be able to do. And so like the time skip was like with that time skip, they were able to then like develop the technology, and even then it's still like it's one of those endings where it's like, did Fua like warp and they were able to like make that connection? But like there's like such a vast gap that it's always like, I don't know, it's definitely it's very neat how, yeah, in that sense that it kind of like words I've already said.
Yeah, and I guess to go back to what I said about like the understanding and imagination thing, like how they presented the ending, like fits thematically with the show, and I really appreciate that. Where it was just a really good ending, and the last two episodes were good, and I cried a bunch over the show, even though like again, yeah, it wasn't consistent, and like I wouldn't say I had problems with it, but there was definitely a lot of episodes where it just wasn't super engaging. And at the end of the day, like, as much as I enjoyed the cast and as good as some of the writing with them is, it's like, I don't love them in the same way, like, with the a la mode cast, like, looking at my notes, so for the Precure Miracle Universe movie, which was the Star Twinkle a la mode Hugto crossover, So I'm just looking at my notes. I don't know what the context from this one was, but I go, look at these space dummies, which I assume was the Star Twinkle characters in space, because they're dummies. And I have in all caps Hugtos because they appeared, and then I have Alamode. Like I lost my shit. I lost my shit when the Alamode characters appeared because it's legit one of my favorite casts and probably my favorite cast in Precure because I think they're all really great.
That's why, like, when you had told me about the Miracle Universe movie, and you're like, well, it depends on how much you want to see the Hugto cast again. And I'm like, that might be enough to sell me.
Right. And, like, there's, so, like, it's not going to do a lot for the characters because it's just like, here's, 15 characters in one movie. Go nuts. Like, okay. Or 14 or whatever. But, like, a lot. And like for me, one of the highlights was because in Precure mode they have like they work at like a baking sweets they make sweets, and so they have like these baking outfits, and so Lala got one, and it was cute. And I'm like they put Lala in a mode baking outfit. I'm like yes yes. Was the movie that good? No, I didn't give a very high score. Didn't give a very high score. It wasn't super interesting, but I got to see characters and interactions. So it was kind of fun, but it wasn't that, and the production wasn't very good, especially compared to the Star Twinkle movie. But I got little interactions between the casts. That's what I was there for. But yeah, like I wanted to bring that up because again, my reaction to the a la mode characters is really strong. So like I really want to rewatch it and see how I feel about it now. But so Star Twinkle, I guess. Final thoughts, like I gave it like a light 8. Because I cried a lot, and even though it wasn't really good, like if it was all as good as like those last episodes, it'd probably be a 9 or maybe a 10. Like if it was like, but that's reaching. But again, like and speaking on like potential or not potential, but like an imagined idea of what the show could have been. But I had a lot of fun with it. So
and then I'm gonna be over here the buzzkill where I'm like I give it a 5. But like we had this whole discussion, and I talked about like there were things I still appreciated out of it, and you know.
No, yeah, it sounds like you still got quite a bit out of it, even if you didn't.
Like I said, the
like
5 out of
much.
10 is it's mid. Like it's not bad. It's just like, eh. You know?
Yeah, well, and like again, I understand your perspective. Or like for me, I guess the good parts of the show stuck out to me more. But with you, the slog of it, and like the fact that you almost dropped it twice. Like, and even if there was good stuff, it didn't click with you that much to really like heighten it for you. Yeah, so I understand because like, it's not a consistent show. So it depends on like
and it's also like I know maybe part of it, like maybe if I went back and rewatched the first like 15 episodes that I had seen way back, maybe that would give me enough context to maybe up the score a bit, or maybe I'd get something else out of it. But like even after I picked it back up and was going through the final like 30 episode stretch, it really wasn't until we started getting into like the 30s that I was really starting to click with it. And which is like, when people say like sometimes a series takes a while to get good, there was definitely like pushback that like, no, a great series should be good in episode 1. And whereas like I definitely think there's a degree to which like this series definitely like I said, I felt like the back half was a lot stronger. But I don't know, like the first episode wasn't bad by any means. So that's why I guess there's a degree to which like that applies, but also like I do think it got better. It was fine.
Yeah,
it was a fine series of season of Precure.
Yeah, and I guess since you brought it up, like, because a la mode is kind of important to me, or in that, like, just the way you described it, like, yeah, it gets better, or the better episodes are in the first, and like, where my stance on that is like, no, you're not obligated to give any series your full time, unless I feel if you want to like discuss it in especially in some kind of critical or analytical capacity. Like if you're making it, which is to say, if you're making a video on it, like if you're gonna make like an analytical video on Star Twinkle Precure and you only saw 5 episodes, I don't think you're gonna have that much to offer, So
and like the thing I had also said earlier was like I'm glad that I got back to it and was able to finish it because I did enjoy, I enjoyed what I got out of it.
Right,
so it wasn't something that like, oh, I should have just dropped it,
Yeah, and that's what I was kind of getting at with a la mode, and kind of why even when I want to go back and finish Mahou Sakai, even if I end up not liking Mahou Sakai, and maybe it'll be my least favorite Precure season, like with a la mode, yeah, I didn't super like the first 11 episodes. That's like a fifth of the show, but like the show got so much better after that it like kind of changed how I sort of feel, like where it's like part of me does want to give everything like my full. I haven't dropped a show in like over a year, like except for there was one show we watched on the Weeb Club, but I'd already read the manga and the anime was just a bad adaptation, and then I dropped Gintama because I wasn't feeling it. Like those are the last 2 anime I dropped. I recently dropped Kamen Rider V3, so never mind. But that's one show in all of 2020 basically.
Yeah, I haven't been dropping as many shows anymore nowadays, but I think I've just like gotten a better idea of what I will and won't enjoy, and like if I hear enough good things about a series, I'll be more inclined to check it out.
Yeah, and again, I'm not saying like no one should drop shows because again, how you use your time is up to you. But I'm just saying like, I'm glad that I went back and finished Star Twinkle, and I got great things out of it. Even and even if I did give the show like a lower score, like. I'm glad that I finished it, and I'm glad, even
though I was the one who had the lower score of the
right, but you feel similarly to me, so it's like, right, and that's just kind of where I stand on things.
It's just amusing. You're like, even though I give it a lower score, and you're like an 8 out of 10.
Even if I would have given a lower score, like I think I would have, is what I meant to say. Where I think I would have felt the same as you. Like even if I also gave it a 5, I think I would still agree with you. Where it's like I'm glad I finished it and got these good things out of it. Because I did think it did some really good, cool things. But anyway, so yeah,
this episode went on longer than our other magical girl discussion.
Good thing I'm not editing it. This went on longer than our last Gintama discussion, which was
did it? Well, yeah, I don't know. By the time I cut some things down, when Discord cut out in the middle, maybe it'll kind of average out.
Yeah, well, we'll see. But anyway, so next time is probably going to be Futari wa Precure, the first series, not after that, we might do either, I don't know, depends on how Matthews feels, because we still want to finish Ojimata Doremi. We did decide how we're going to do that, where we're just going to do it in release order, so we're going to watch Season 3, watch Season 4, and then we're going to do one more episode on the OVAs and the recent film, that I think is subtitled. I think I saw a torrent for it somewhere, but
If not now, by the time we finish Moto, it'll be done.
Right, and then we have 3. Yeah, exactly. We have 2 seats, like 50 more episodes. Yeah, it should be done by the time we get to end.
Oh wait,
possibly...
no, Dokkan comes after
Dokkan.
Moto. I named the wrong series. Fuck me.
Yeah, and then after Futari of Precure, we'll have Max Heart. So we'll have 2 potential like sequel series to get to after. And if Mathwiz does it 1 episode a day, and if she can keep up with that, then we'll be putting these out roughly every 2 months, basically. So, which is a better rate than our Ojimajo 2 episodes. So but we'll see how it happens. I'm glad to be doing more Nono show. As far as Healing Good Precure, it's up to Mathwiz, because for me it's going to be the first Precure series I've watched. Like how did I put it earlier? Hugto Precure was the first series I ended watching weekly. Star Twinkle was the first one I started watching weekly, but Healing Good looks like it's going to be the first one that I've started and ended. I've watched weekly from beginning to end. So if Mathwiz wants to check it out,
I don't think that's likely. I'm starting from the very beginning of Precure and probably aiming to go chronologically from there. So I won't be getting to unless something changes. I don't plan on getting the Healing Good for a while, maybe a decade. Who knows how long it'll take me to go through all these series.
I mean, at 1 episode a day, you could watch 7 series in a year. So it would, but that's only if you.
Yeah,
if you
let's
watch
not get ahead of ourselves. Don't set these expectations too high for me.
Oh, and that's only if you watch Precure, because if you watch Sailor Moon, that's 200 episodes. If you watch Ojimajo Doremi, that's 100 more episodes. So it's like. And
there are other magical girl series out there.
Right.
Cardcaptor Sakura. Who knows what else?
Yep. So no, and that's kind of the point of the show, is to give us an excuse to check out more magical girl series so that we can make content on them, even if it's just a podcast. I might make a Star Twinkle video. Don't tell anybody.
I won't. But look forward to that one.
Anyway, thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.